Well, good evening and a very warm welcome on behalf of Milim to this evening's presentation. Welcome to you wherever you may be in the UK and indeed wherever you are in the world. Our series of talks and conversations continues with our guest, Harvey Lisberg. I'll introduce Harvey to you in just a moment. Some housekeeping first. You are encouraged to ask questions. Please do this by typing whatever you'd like to ask into the Q&A facility on your screen. As ever, we'll try our best to get through as many of your questions as possible. There's also a chat facility you'll find on your screen, and that will allow you to send a message to all of the other participants on this webinar, should you wish to do so. Finally, we are recording this event and it will appear on our website at milim.org.uk in the next couple of days. There you will find recordings of other past talks, as well as details of our future programme for which you can book tickets. Now to our guest this evening. Harvey Lisberg was born in Salford in 1940. After training as an accountant, he switched to managing pop music artists in 1963. He's best known for managing Herman's Hermits, Tony Christie and 10cc, as well as more recently looking after snooker stars Alex Higgins and Jimmy White. Harvey is the author of this book, I'm Into Something Good, My Life Managing 10cc, Herman's Hermits, and many more, as well as a recently published ebook, Managing the Bad Boys of Snooker, Jimmy White and Alex Higgins. He splits his time between Manchester and Palm Springs, from where he joins us now. So welcome, Harvey. Nice to have you with us. This conversation is supposed to be about snooker, but I think we wouldn't be doing your story justice if we didn't start a little bit further back. So how did you get into managing bands?
Well, I was always interested in music from a musical background. My father was a really good musician. He was the first violinist at Manchester Grammar, and he played the saxophone in the war in the army band. And he played opera all day and night at our house, and I was inundated with that kind of music and the synagogue music choirs, which were fantastic. And I started writing songs. Really, I got a guitar and I started writing songs just about the skiffle era. And my idea was to get the songs to various artists, which I co-wrote some of these songs with Charlie Silverman, a local friend, and we got nowhere with it. And I decided, well, what I need to do is to get a band and maybe they will play my songs. So I arranged a contest with the Manchester Evening News or something like that, and I went to this church hall in Davyhulme where Herman's Hermits were playing, Herman and the Hermits as they were known. And I met them. When I went there, I saw their act. And after each number, they were stormed by lots of fans screaming and shouting. And I thought I'd won the pulls, because in the meantime, the Beatles had just happened. And everybody, I was thinking that I could be a Brian Epstein. You know, I thought, well, that's good. Because I'd gone to university, I got a commerce degree, I was going to be an accountant. And then I wanted to be a stockbroker, all sorts of ambitions. But I got very bored with the accountancy profession. And my relief was music. So, and when I met Herman's Hermits, as I say, they're all being stormed by all these fans. I found out later that they were all their friends and cousins. They'd heard somebody was coming to look at them. And so that's how it evolved. And my luck was the first act that I ever tried to manage was Herman and the Hermits. And from there on, it was a joyride.
Now, reading your book, you seem to have a knack for spotting a hit. What is it you're looking for?
I'm not necessarily looking for anything. I just hear something and I think it's got magic. You know, I've managed Wayne Fontana, and I got, they sent me a demo of the Mamas and Papas doing Monday Monday before it was released. I just listened to that. I thought, God, that's a smash. It just was so outstanding. other records that I've had that are sort of, it's happened a lot to me actually, but in the early days with Herman's Hermits, after their first hit, we had an office in Manchester and we played music morning, noon and night. And you could always tell the hits. The idea being that we had an agency. So we wanted to get to book the acts that were going to be the hit acts. So for instance, the Fortunes, You've Got Your Troubles, we heard that as a demo. So Danny, my partner, booked them and at a good price. And then that was a way I got into the habit of listening to things. But it was always, it seemed kind of obvious to me. I mean, I heard House of the Rising Sun. I don't think anybody that heard it wouldn't have thought it would have been a hit. Or Mungo Jerry in the Summertime. In those days, there were a lot of great songs. And I think it was also a rebellion against the 30s and 40s music. When I first got into, went to bar mitzvahs or I went to Midland Hotel and you heard these trios or North Pier at Blackpool all playing the same old stuff, like Sentimental Moon and June. And it was probably just after rock and roll started that I really got into it. And as I say, I learned to play the guitar. Paul Beattie, who was a skiffle group who played at the Bodega, taught me how to play. And then we did the songs. And actually, some of the songs, I thought the songs were all right, but they were never, ever, ever going to be a million miles from the Beatles songs. I just thought there would be songs like I'm Telling You Now, catchy songs. I thought we could write them. And we had the B-side on Peter Noon's Herman's Hermits' first record, which was very lucky because we shared the royalties with Goffin and King, who again were light years ahead. So it's difficult for me to answer the question, but it was more than that. I also felt I could see what was going to happen in the future. I sort of could get on trends very quickly. I don't know why. Even the theatre, as you know, with the Rice Weber situation, I had Joseph and the Dreamcoat for like 12:09 p.m. 12, I don't know what happened there. I just got so lucky. I don't know what it was. I thought, well, that's a hit. And I had reasons for it. And it did, but it was 30 years later. It kept happening to me in my life, Maybe
we'll talk about. I think it's a gift. You certainly seem to have spotted many winners, and hopefully we'll talk about Lloyd and Tim Rice and Lloyd Webber a bit later on. And you mentioned various names there of people you work with. One of the people the book says you work with extensively was Mickey Most, and I can remember Mickey Most as a rather miserable panelist on New Faces, where he was always horrible to everybody. What are your recollections of him? And
he was a difficult person. He was a really strong egomaniac, and he was the best picker of songs you could imagine. So maybe I got some of it rubbed off on me. He could pick hits anywhere, and he went to different areas. He was never stayed in the same place. He was very arrogant, very single-minded. I think part of the reason why the Hermits didn't develop more on a musical front when they could have potentially done really great things was because of Mickey's insistence on picking everything and then keeping them down sort of in a way, which is a shame because they were really brilliant musicians. I like Mickey. He had two sides. He had a lovely side. He tried to talk my wife into stopping smoking, stopped a session in the middle, got Carol on one side and said, look, you got to stop smoking, and I was quite touched by it. He also was very friendly with Peter, but this was prior to his days as a panelist and prior to his days when he formed his Rack label. I just think basically he was an egomaniac, a likable one. But the one thing I didn't like about him is one of the interviews he did when they asked him, what do you do? He's on his yacht with a glass of champagne in his hand in the south of France. They said, do you ever play music? Would you ever play Herman's Hermits? Oh, no, I wouldn't play that sort of music. And I thought, blimey, the guy's created all these fantastic hits with Herman's Hermits, and yet he wasn't keen on playing them. I mean, I will always play some of my favorite Hermits songs. I will play now, Sentimental Friend, or some great songs. There's a Kind of Hush, the classics. You know, so to decry all the work he did was strange. But he was very friendly with Peter. He was the best man at Peter's wedding, which was in 1968. It's a year before I got married.
And this is Peter Noon.
Peter Noon. I'm sorry, I
it?
call him Peter now because since the book, I've reconnected with him and speak to him regularly now, which is quite fun. Best part of the book, really, is being able to reconnect with Jimmy White, with Peter Noon, people I've not spoken to for years, and learned a lot about that era that you're talking about, because a lot of people remember things I don't even remember, and then they rekindle my memories. And it's leading me to do work on the second book to include some of the stories that, you know, hadn't occurred to me. Well, I hope that answered the question. I'm Mickey Most. I don't know what else to tell you. I think he was very.
Well, his role was producer. How does the role of producer differ from the role of manager?
Oh,
what was he doing?
His job was to find the songs, book the studio, book the, you know, he just did everything to do with the recording studio and Hermits. He took all the weight off a manager, really, because a manager can do that job, but it was great to have Mickey Most. And, you know, once I started with everything I touched in the 60s went to gold, whether I was directly or indirectly involved with it. I don't know what that was, but I started with Mickey Most, and he had the #1 with House of the Rising Sun about 2 weeks later. So that was #1 worldwide by the time I'm Into Something Good went out. I mean, we talk about Graham Gouldman later. We had For Your Love. Everything we touched went to gold. It was unreal, actually. And Mickey, he got the best musicians, to the detriment of Herman and the Hermits, who were quite adequately good. They were good musicians, but they weren't used on all the sessions. He'd much rather use Jimmy Page or Clem Catini on the drums. Use the top.
So you're saying when we're listening to a recording of Herman's Hermits, it's not actually them who are playing.
It's always them singing, but on some of them, they're either they were playing, but the main parts were played by other people. And John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin did most of the arrangements. So Mickey picked a great arranger, the top musician man. This might be all due to business, because maybe he felt that if he used the best people, it'll be quicker, so there'll be less time in the studio. I don't know what ruled it, you know, but you don't change a winning ship. Once we started having hit after hit after hit after hit, why would one want to change it? And we had a lot of hits, as you know.
Now, you speak a lot about getting your acts into America, breaking into the American market. It's always an aspiration, whoever you're managing. What were the particular challenges with America, and why was it so important to the artists you were managing?
America probably had X thousand radio stations, so you could get stuff played. It also had X thousand venues, so there were all the different places people would play. You could play all year, going East Coast, West Coast, South, and all different territories. So you could be very popular, as we were. I mean, we were more popular in the Midwest than we were anywhere else, but it didn't matter, because America's like a conglomeration of countries, really. California is bigger than England, you know. The United Kingdom could fit into California. So it's bigger, more sales. Also, it had it was responsible for all our pop music originally. All the pop music came from America. As a kid, we used to listen to 208 or American Forces Network, you know, on radio, and we all came from America. All the pop music came from America. So you wanted to get to America anyhow. The Beatles opened the door. The Beatles were unbelievable. And Epstein did a great job, whatever it was, where it was just timing and everything was right. The music was absolutely brilliant. And we kind of followed in, and we did really well. We actually outsold the Beatles in 1965, or for a whole month, which is astonishing, really, considering how much the difference in the quality of the two groups were. So it's amazing what we really achieved. Yeah, well, so I got to like Tony Christie. I couldn't get Tony Christie arrested in America. And you can't believe that when he had Is This the Way to Amarillo as a single. You'd think at least it would be a hit in Amarillo. But no, it got to #4 in Los Angeles radio station, and that was it. It never made America. I must say that Neil Sedaka didn't like the song anyhow when I got it from him originally. He didn't like it. And maybe it wasn't right for American ears, but my idea was to get Tony Christie to break him big in America. He'd play Las Vegas. He'd do all the things that virtually Tom Jones did, you know. But I just couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't get anywhere. It's just unfortunate.
Tell us a bit about how you came to meet Neil Sedaka and how you got that song for Christie.
Jonathan, I think we've lost Harvey for a moment, so
I'm sure he'll be back.
He'll be back.
He'll be back to tell us all about Neil Sedaka and how he got that song. He just dropped.
He's just lost connection. So I'm going to have to go backstage and sort it out. Okay, if you could just stay there.
I'll keep everybody amused for a little bit. Well, this hasn't happened in I don't know how many years we've been running these events. I don't think we've ever had a speaker disappear mid-performance, just as it was getting interesting. But I'm sure he'll be back soon. And one of the things I want to talk to him about is this photograph, which is Harvey with Peter Noon from Herman's Hermits, but also, if you see in the middle there, Elvis Presley. So we're going to have a chat about Elvis, and then we're going to talk about some of the other people that Harvey has worked with, and then we'll get on to snooker in due course. I think somebody's back. I can hear somebody coming in. So hopefully that's him, and we'll get straight back on with the webinar. It's so nice to see so many people on this call today. Hello to Yvonne in Southern California. Nice to see you. And a great question from Philip Cohen. We're going to put that to Harvey when we get him back. Oh, here he is. He's back. Harvey, I wanted to ask you about Neil Sedaka, how you came to meet him and how
Not yet. 1 second. 1 second.
Okay.
1 second. 1 second.
You're back.
Fantastic. Yeah, the gremlins got us.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about Neil Sedaka and how you came to meet him and how you came to acquire that song off him for Tony Christie.
I was very friendly with Donny Kirshner, who was quite an important part of the music business, and he had a publishing company called Screen Gems Music, and they operated from the Brill building. So to cut a long story short, when I was in New York with my wife, I looked him up and I went to his office. And I always was a fan of Neil Sedaka in the 50s, loved all his songs, and thought he was very talented. And with the advent of the Beatles and all the British invasion, he sort of disappeared off the face of the earth. And I just happened flippantly to say to Donny Kirshner, whatever happened to Neil Sedaka? And he said, oh, he's upstairs. I said, you're kidding. He said, do you want to meet him? I said, sure, great. So we went upstairs, 5 floors up, little room. I don't think there was even any light in the room. Piano, very teeny room. And Donny Kirshner said, would you like to hear some of the songs that he's written? I said, yeah, okay. He played 5 songs. The first 4 were pretty mediocre, but they were all right. But like you said, I had a gift for seeing a hit. So I wasn't impressed with the first from a hit point of view. But the last one was, Is This the Way to Amarillo? And I thought, wow, I'll have that. And Neil Sedaka looked at Donny Kirshner, and they both looked at each other. They said, this guy joking or what? Anyhow, I said, look, I'd like a demo. Please send it me. And of course, nothing happened. I got back to England, and my wife, bless her, drove me mad every day. Have you got that demo yet? Have you got it? Why don't you phone him? And I got phoning and phoning. Finally, about 2 months later, it arrived, a white label, and that was it. So I got the white label. I got on a train to London. I met Mitch Murray and Peter Callender, who were Tony Christie's producers. They got it arranged and everything, and they recorded it 2 days later. And it went out 2 weeks later after that, and was a total disaster. It was following records which are number 2, 3. It got to 18, and I thought, oh, that's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. It should have been miles higher. And that was that. 20 years later, Peter Kay does the Red Nose Day, does a phenomenal video. Peter Kay's mother liked Is This the Way to Amarillo? So he did a demo, he did a video with that, which was superb. And then the record was #1 for 12 weeks and was the biggest record of 2004. So it got what it deserved. It was a great record. And of course, following on from that, when after the first record went in at number 18, Donny Kirshner was very happy because they hadn't had any hits at all for like 7 or 8 years. So he was very happy, even though I wasn't. He was very happy with the position it got. And he said, and I told him about Strawberry Studios, which we co-owned with Eric and Graham.
This is
said,
Eric Stewart
right,
and Graham Goulman.
I'm sorry, I'm talking personally other people know. Eric Stewart and Graham Goulman had Strawberry Studios. And Kennedy Street Enterprises with Danny Batesh and myself, we invested in it and ran it with with Rick Dixon as well, who was a co-manager of 10cc. So that's the whole situation then. And Neil Sedaka and Donny Kirshner said, okay, we'll go and try and do some demos there. So they came over, they were going to come over to do 3 songs. He ended up doing 2.5 albums. And before each session, apparently, he used to sit at the piano and do a little recital while all of 10cc was sitting on the floor. And I used to bring bagels and smoked salmon from North Manchester, which I claim were the best in the world. Both the smoked salmon and the bagels, in my opinion, were the best from Manchester anywhere. And he agreed actually with that to such an extent that I got a lousy credit on the album instead of saying, thanks to Harvey Lisberg, thanks to Harvey for the lox and bagels. So it was a great story. But anyhow, so I personally, without being big-headed, feel that I was as responsible for Neil Sedaka's revival as anybody, although all the credit goes to obviously Elton John, who was a bigger, it was much more prestigious for Neil to give credit there. But I think the reality is that without Amarillo, would he have had the resurgence? I don't know. And also he suggested to the boys, Eric Stewart, Graham Goulman, Kevin Godley and Lol Cream, why don't you form your own band? And that's how 10cc evolved. So the story goes.
Well, let's talk about 10cc. But before that, this photograph I have of you with, I hope everybody can see that, of you with Elvis Presley and the Colonel. What's the story there? How did you come to meet Elvis?
Well, we were doing a world tour, I think in 1965, I think it was. And I think when it finished, I loved Hawaii. I always wanted to live in Hawaii. That was my aim in life. I found it just fascinating, the temperature, the trade winds. I just loved Hawaii at the time in the 60s. It was amazing. And so I arranged that at the end of the tour, we'd go and stay in Hawaii for a few days. Very friendly with a DJ called Tom Moffat, who put on most of the shows in Hawaii, including Elvis Presley and everybody, Frank Sinatra. He did it. Anyway, we got a telegram from the hotel saying the Colonel and Elvis would like to meet you and Herman's Hermits. Could you come and see us on the film set? So of course I said no. So anyhow, no, I'm thrilled. So we all went down. When I say we didn't all. Apparently, according to Keith Hotwood, which I found out later, having inquired why he wasn't at the at the meeting, or in fact left. They said they got so fed up because the meeting kept being changed and they wanted to get back to England after a long tour. So it was Barry Whitwell, myself, and Peter Noon were the only remnants. We went down to the Polynesian village and I was greeted just the way I wanted to be greeted. Oh, a fat Jewish Epstein. That was the first thing he said to me. I thought, oh, Jesus, right, this is great. And they took us to this Polynesian hut. We went into the hut. There were 6 people there, no shirts on, white trousers, flip-flops, and Elvis Presley. And if Elvis smiled, they smiled. If he coughed, they coughed. If he farted, they farted. Whatever happened, he was the king and they were all the, and he was sweet. And Peter Noon was absolutely brilliant. They did an interview afterwards. And Peter Noon says to Elvis, how come you made it without long hair? And Elvis Presley also brilliantly retorted, well, I think my sideburns might have helped. And that started that conversation. We had it, and it was a lovely, and don't forget, Elvis was very young then. I'm trying to think, 1965. He was 43 when he died in 77. So 77 less 14, he was maybe, what would he be? 30, 29 or something. He looked fantastic. He was God. When I came back to England, I did television interviews, somebody that met Presley. You know, it was amazing. And I was a big Presley fan anyhow. And he's I hated the way they portrayed the Colonel in the film recently on Elvis. It doesn't portray him very nicely. And he was always looked after everybody in the environment. Even Priscilla Presley, apparently after Elvis had died, was always phoned every 2 weeks by the Colonel to see if she wanted anything. But you'd think there was a war between everything and the estates and God knows what, but in reality, he was quite good. And the Colonel was an astonishing character.
Fascinating. Now, we were talking about 10cc a moment ago. Where did the name come from?
Well, it was Jonathan King, according to, as the story goes. Jonathan King thought of the name. He said he told the band he had this dream that he saw his band, best band in the world, 10cc, on top of a poster, not a poster, outside the one of the Hammersmith Odeon or something, 10cc, and he said he had it in a dream. So they took the name. It was a good name. It's short, it's sweet. You know, I was very pleased with the name. I mean, it's like ABBA, bang. It's a great name. Queen, you know, hard-hitting name. Brilliant. And it worked. And of course, then everybody read into it, oh, it's the male ejaculation and all that, you know, stuff that evolved after the 10cc. You know, they come up with theories all the time. And No Milk Today was a drug song in America. You know, they could interpret anything any way they like. But basically, I don't think it had anything to do with anything. And Jonathan just saw this in a dream, according to him. I believe.
Do you think that was some of the magic of 10cc, that there was a sense of mystique around them, that what they were putting out was quite unusual, but was not explained?
I think you've got to give credit. I think the lyrics were absolutely spot on, and they were brilliant. I mean, you can match the lyrics to Paul Simon or the Beatles or anybody. The music was great, but would you say the music's as great as the Beatles? No, you probably wouldn't. And there were other great musical acts like the Rolling Stones, and the music was great. So, but the lyrics were fantastic, and there were the fusion between Eric and Graham, who were like the establishment, if you like, and Kevin Lowell, who were the lunatics, and they were crazy. They were crazy. They were very funny. I mean, they were really funny. They used to do cartoons, and they could do anything, and then mimic people. They were a duo. It was like a popper, like a comedy act, and they had all that. And so they were avant-garde. They tried all experimentation and all the avant-garde stuff. I think actually it's not fair to say that. I think Eric was a brilliant producer, and I think Graham was a genius on the guitar, as well as a great songwriter. I mean, they're all in their own right. They were very special, and they let themselves down by not taking opportunities that had arisen, and their belief that a show had to be perfect. There had to be no flaws sound-wise, whereas they weren't prepared to give anything to the visuality of the show. And the irony is that Kevin Lowell became the head video producers in the world. If they'd applied that to their act at 10cc, 10cc would have been very big. Not as big as Queen because they didn't have Freddie Mercury, but you know, they still would have been much higher up in the pecking order. Now, if you in America, all they know is I'm not in love and the things you do for love. I mean, they didn't have any of the hits we had in England and the rest of the world.
And what happened in America? Because I think
they were on a crappy label that was done by Jonathan King, because we signed to Jonathan King for the world, and that was London Records. And I'm not sure whether he was related to Sir Joseph Lockwood or what the connection was between the two, but he was adamant that he would never take them away. And the reason we left Jonathan King ultimately was because of America and because he gave them a lousy royalty. And he was a public school boy that believed once you've done a contract, you stick to the contract. You know, my idea was, if you're earning more than each member of the band, surely you give them a bit back. But that didn't seem to occur to him, and we've gone into a battle.
And he went on to have a bit of a checkered history. Are you still in touch with him?
Yeah, I spoke to him when he. I know he went to jail for a while. I did speak to him afterwards, and he still proclaims his innocence, rather Trump-like. And he to this day, he will not admit he thinks he was set up and, you know, whatever. And I know nothing about all. At the time, I had my suspicions that all wasn't, you know, a lot of funny things were going on. You know, but I was interested in the music, and Jonathan, again, was very good at picking hits. Excellent. You know, he again was a creator of many hits. You know, like Johnny Reggae and all those hits, apart from Everyone's Gone to the Moon, which was his first one, which was a beautiful song. But yeah, he did a lot of hits. He was very clever. And yeah, it's a shame, whatever was right. Well, a lot of the people, you've got to admit, in those days have now been exposed to very strange behavior patterns. For instance, when I can't show the video of Peter Noon, I think, doing Oh You Pretty Thing, because Jimmy Savile introduced it on Top of the Pops. So if you go back to, if you start looking at all the characters, you know, I mean, all the scandals and everything that came out afterwards. I mean, the Queen's favourite, what was he called? The Australian guy, didgeridoo guy, Rolf Harris.
Oh, Rolf Harris, yeah.
I mean, and also they persecuted a lot of people incorrectly. I know that poor Gamaccini had a lot of pain, totally diabolical, actually, you know, and what can you do?
So, right, one more question about music, then we'll get on to snooker. So we have a question from our viewer, Philip Cohen. He says, I loved the music of the 60s and I still do. I'm not at all keen on the music of this era. What do you think of today's music and what do you listen to now? Any favourites?
Yeah, well, I like listening to all music, and I don't like to generalize particularly because I think there are some magnificent songs today. But the main reason why he feels the way he feels, and most people feel that the music was better then, was basically because the song was the most important thing in the 60s. When we used to go to Tin Pan Alley, we were peddling songs. And when you went there, you heard songs from all different songwriters, and all the artists were looking to perform their songs. It wasn't all self-written songs. Once it got to the stage where each artist did their own album and they hardly used anybody else's material. I mean, Graham wrote a beautiful song, which was sent to Barry Manilow, who recorded it with a 20-piece orchestra. And because it wasn't written by Barry Manilow and wasn't a single, it wasn't never released. So there are a load of songs in those days. So there are more songs available. So therefore, it appears there are more songs. And I listen to, as I said, I will listen to everything. I listen to rap. I listen to country music. Lots of the songwriters have gone to the country music. They go to Nashville to write now, whereas in the 60s, they go to Tim Panelli. Because that's the one thing about country music. They do other people's material, which is good. But I agree with Phil that I wouldn't say that the quality of the music today is as good. And maybe that's also because of the production and everything to do with a song is not the song, it's a package now. And, maybe Taylor Swift has written some good songs, but, the pantomime that goes around it kind of takes it away from the song.
So snooker players, what is a slight jump from the music business? What persuaded you, or what gave you the idea to diversify?
Well, I think
into
about
managing snooker players?
1980, all the band, sort of the punk revolution arrived. And bands like 10cc Queen and everybody else like that, who were going around in Rolls Royces and Ferraris and were not the flavor of the month. Subsequently, all the music that was played was the new punk music, which I didn't personally find attractive to me. And also it was very political, of course. And again, I don't like to generalize. There was some good stuff there as well. But basically, I thought, we're knocking our head against a wall. We're not going to get anywhere. Eric had a car accident and Graham was on his own. I just decided that I'm going to try and get into sport, which I had done initially because I was in partnership with Danny Batesh and we had this company called Kennedy Street Enterprise, and I wanted to develop everything. I wanted to be in classical music, but I couldn't because Gabay had it locked up. It was like a monopoly.
We had him as a guest a few months ago, actually. He's very, very interesting.
Well, I know nothing about him except you couldn't get arrested. He had a lot. Everything to do with classical. I mean, I said to Danny, well, why can't we book an orchestra and put it on and let them play Gilbert and Sullivan or something? Well, why can't we do it? Well, we couldn't. And that was that. Comedy, all locked up by London management, and who subsequently, we sold half our company to London management and bought it back afterwards because they didn't deliver. They had the Palladium, they had Talk of the Town, they had everything, all the comedians then, and all the comedians then were in Liverpool. Michael Hughes had Arthur, Ken Dodd, Arthur Askey, all that lot, all came from Liverpool. And I said to Danny, we're in Manchester, only 30 miles away. We had Cannon and Ball for a while. That didn't work out because the guy that managed them took him away from the company, although he was part of the company. There was a series of things. Then football, I managed Fred Pickering, who was an England footballer, and Gary Owen, who was a Manchester City footballer for a while. All very short periods, not under contract, very lightweight. And Manchester United wouldn't speak to managers. I tried to transfer Gary Owen to Manchester United. They refused. So sport, to me, always was marketable. And also there are a lot of similarities that the stars, they became, well, George Best is the best example of, the fifth Beatle. There was something, an empathy between being a rock star and a sports star. Now the sports stars have kind of taken over almost. It's amazing, really. So that's the snooker had started to get popular. David Attenborough was the head of the BBC, and I think he started Pot Black. And then colour television came, and the table transfixed snooker with the green and all the colours. It became something very special. So that was really interesting. And then Higgins had won in. They were, to me, they all looked like penguins. They all had tuxedos with white shirts and little black bow ties. It was weird. Anyhow, in our firm, we had a guy called Roy Speak, who's a lovely man, and he was a snooker player. And he used to play at a place called Potter's, which was in Salford. And he said, there's a young kid coming up. Would you want to go down and see him? So we went to there. I met Jeff Lomas, who owned the club. And then we formed a company called Sports World. And we took on Jimmy White as the first client, which he was an amazing player. I mean, just incredible player. It was ridiculous. I mean,
how old would he have been at that point in time?
19, 20 or 21, I don't know. But no, I think he had his 21st birthday when he was signed to us. But he was very, very young, and very, very fast on the table, and unbelievable. I took him round to an accountant I had called Michael Alexander. He had a house next to mine. He had this little pool table, about 6 foot by 3 foot. And the table was like the dunes at St. Anne's. There were so many creeks in it. There was no chalk on the cues. There was nothing. And I challenged Jimmy to a game of pool. Oh my God. We cleared all the balls, and I left one ball dead safe in the middle of one cushion, and the opposite cushion dead safe right in the middle. And he looked at me and said, I can't miss that. I said, do me a favor. So you're joking, aren't you? Isn't that a fair? Oh, my sack, but no problem. Gets the bloody cue. And there's no tip on the cue. The table's crazy. And he hits it about 100 miles an hour. The ball goes flying back into the pocket on the other side. Well, I'm not playing with a professional player again. A different level. You can't imagine how superior they are. It was amazing. And we got a load of press with him because we changed his image.
What did you do? How did you change his image?
Like with Herman's Hermits, which we didn't do. Peter had a protruding tooth which fell out, but he had a terrible teeth, Jimmy. We got him to a dentist, a local dentist. It might have been Jeffrey No, yeah, I think it was. And we got all his teeth fixed for start. Then I measured him up. I wanted to get away from the black suit. And I happened to have been in the south of France, in Nice or somewhere. And I saw this beautiful houndstooth suit, just a beautiful dinner suit, you know. The firm is called Claude Benucci. And I took it back to England, and my wife measured Jimmy up, which was hysterical, because she'd never measured anybody before, although her uncle, who was Harold Cohen, his name was, his son Michael Cohen managed the Hollies. Everything wraps up together. I don't know why, but it's just thing. So as she measured his inside leg, and I was just roaring with laughter. Anyhow, we got the suit altered, he got it on. And then one of my tricks was always to use the best person in whatever profession we needed. As a manager, I wanted the best PR. So we went to Lichfield, who'd just done Princess Diana's wedding photographs with Charles. And he did this iconic picture, which you might have or not, of Jimmy White in that suit. And that became a thing. I wanted to do, and then we did his hair, which was a big argument with sports world directors. I wanted to give him a punk hairstyle because all the people that went to see him were from that class and would associate with the lunatic hairstyle. But I was voted down. So he had this very strange hairstyle, which still was different to everything else. And then he got stuffed at the Crucible by Steve Davis. You might have read in the book, 9-0, right?
But there was a reason for that, wasn't there? Because he was.
There's always a reason.
He was not. He was not the most studious of players, shall we say?
No. The thing about Steve Davis, well, first of all, Jimmy, drugs, womanizing, drink, benders. He was not the fit sportsman that goes in. He goes in as a wild kid, takes on shots that probably Davis hadn't even thought about. Because the great thing about Davis is when he took a shot, he knows if he's going to miss it, the percentage of it being safe is pretty good. I don't think Jimmy would ever even think about that at all. He just went, well, and he was faster than Higgins as well. So he was exciting to watch. The public loved him. Yeah, but different playing fields. So Steve Davis ruled the roost. He was very steady. You know, met him for breakfast before the final in Scotland. And he said, can I join you for breakfast? I said, yes. And he was playing Jimmy in the final at 1 o'clock. And we had breakfast at 9 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, he said, I've got to go now. I said, where are you going? He says, oh, I've got to go and practice. I said, practice? He said, oh, yes, I've got to go and do 2 hours practice. So I'm working it out in my mind. It says 9:30, 11, he's going to practice from 9:30 to 11:30, and he's going to play Jimmy at 1. At 12:30, we can't find Jimmy. Jimmy's not got out of bed yet. I had to drag him out of bed, get him dressed quickly, get him down to the hall. Oh my God, he got killed, of course, 10-4. And that's what I mean by not the same playing field.
I think, I mean, you described some of your own behaviour early in your career. I'm not suggesting for a moment you were quite on a par with Jimmy White, but do you think that perhaps gave you some empathy with him, and that you could understand
Well,
him
the
in
gambling
a way that
side,
others wouldn't?
definitely. The
Yeah.
whole of snooker was riddled by gambling. I mean, they all gambled thousands on the races. There's nothing for Higgins to put 2,000 a race. In those days, that was a lot of money. And I gambled a lot. You know, I did a lot of gambling. Gambling was my vice, you know, my main vice. It wasn't drinking, and it wasn't womanizing. I was happily married. So it was just gambling for me, but for them, it was everything else.
And gangsters.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
tell us that story.
when you think about it, all of Herman's, all the bands I managed, they were kind of from families that, although some of them had alcoholic parents, you know, that were on alcohol all the time, but basically they were all straightforward people that wanted the sons to go to school and be better, and college or whatever. Whereas in snooker, these guys just seemed to be out all night in these clubs hustling, making more than the parents did, and the parents, I think, turned a blind eye to what was going on. So they lived in that land of smoke and seediness, you know, and gambling and gangsters and money. I can imagine at the age of 13, Jimmy probably made 300 quid a week hustling. Yeah. The other kids at school probably got £4 or £1 for spending.
But you're right that Ronnie Cray took an interest in.
Oh God,
Jimmy.
that is a classic story. Yeah. Well, Jimmy did a favor for one of these gangsters, and when the favor the gangster did I'm sorry. This one of the gangsters, one of these people, asked Jimmy, let me get it right, because it's not really, it's sort of put in the book in a weird way. Jimmy needed a favor from one of these gangsters, and the gangster did it. And when it came to, Jimmy said, well, shall I give you a couple of grand or something, whatever? And he says, no, but I might, you know, as in Godfather terms, might call on you one day for a favor. So about a year later, Jimmy gets his phone call. He says, by the way, he says, I'd like to meet a friend. Oh, sure. I'd like to meet a friend of mine. So, yeah, okay, who's that? So there's one of the Cray twins. So Jimmy shit himself. He did. That was the last thing. I mean, Jimmy's from the East End of London, and the Crays were very well known in the East End. You don't mess around. And anyhow, so they sent these two muscles round to pick Jimmy up, and Jimmy wasn't there, or Jimmy somehow got away, was delighted not to be there. But the third time they got him first thing in the morning, and they said, you, in his car. They put him in the car, and he said, I couldn't see through the windscreen. They were so big in the front, the two of them. Took him down to the boat, on the boat, over to the Isle of Man, to the prison, and he's now terrified. And there he meets one of the Cray twins, and they threw his arms around him, and it was like being an afternoon tea at the Dorchester. There were tablecloths, there was sandwiches, and he had a teddy bear for Jimmy, for his daughter, who was having a 6th birthday party. And they talked for 3 hours on snooker, nothing else. And of course, he didn't know that Cray was gay or anything. Nobody knew in those days. The film sort of exposed everything to the public, I think. I didn't know I wouldn't have known. So, you know, Jimmy certainly wouldn't have known. And that was the story of the Cray twin. I mean, that must have been quite a terrifying experience.
And what about Higgins? You managed him for a while. What happened? What happened to Alex Higgins?
Well, Alex saw all the publicity we were getting from Jimmy White. The revelation, all the papers are full of it. And he wanted a bit of it. So he came and said, can I join your firm? And he was very friendly with Jeff Lomas. Jeff Lomas had been the best man at Higgins' wedding. So that worked out very well. We took him on. And at first everybody was in love with each other. Of course, he was behaving himself, but not really behaving himself, because he was totally off the wall. He's a split personality, you know. One side is sweet and nice, the other side is a total is a lunatic. Just couldn't behave normally, and very heavy into drink, gambling, and drugs, which I didn't really know much about. The only thing is I kept seeing the same faces that I'd seen at backstage of pop rock concerts. The same drug people were hanging around the snooker players now. So I assumed that Higgins was involved in that. Anyhow, I said to Jeff Lomas, we've got to get him cleaned up if we want him to win the world title, you know, because he's not won it for 10 years and it will make him into an icon if he can do it. So we did exactly that. We put him in the nursing home in Rochdale. A friend of mine was called Rose Fitton. She owned a nursing home. And they tried to dry him out. No drink, no booze, no women. This was the idea of it. But I think it all fell apart because I think he was getting vodka smuggled in, and I think he was with the nurses. God knows what was going on. But when he left the hospital, the doctor said, what a horrible little man. He didn't like him at all. And Higgins, because of his behavior then, got out of control. He was effing and blinding at all the girls on our switchboard, and they got very upset. And we had to come to a decision, which was partly helped by him. He had then got out of everything, wasn't that enamored with what was going on, because we were being very strict with him. And I don't think he wanted to be free again like he was. He was more in control with his other manager, Del Simmons, who was a very sweet guy and good guy, good manager. And he said, look, I'd like to go back to him. And I thought, oh, right, okay. I don't want all this headache with my firm, with all the girls being upset and everybody. And we had a vote at Sports World, and Jeff Lomas was adamant he didn't want to give him up. He wanted to keep him. And I've learned from that, you know, when you take on an act, you're better off getting somebody that you know is going to be responsible. I'd much rather have a Steve Davis than an Alex Higgins, although Alex Higgins obviously has got the sparkle and the creative thing. I mean, you could relate that almost to Ronnie O'Sullivan today, but he's just such a great, these people are such great players, you just don't know what to say. So I had a vote, and the voting was that 3-1 that would let him go. And once he'd gone, I decided what would happen if he won the world championship. We would commit suicide because we'd gone through all this trouble with him. So I put £1,000 on it, 25-1, I think, with Hills, just in case he won. And the people in the sports will said, oh, you're mad, he'll never win, he'll never win. And of course, not only did he go on and win, but he beat Jimmy in the semi-final. So it was a double whammy for me. And the only money I made off Higgins was that bet.
And did you make any money off Jimmy White?
Jimmy White was another tragedy. He renewed his contract after 3 years to extend it another 3 years. And then a week after that, or 2 weeks after that, somebody called Noel Malachievas has got to him. This guy was an ex-snooker player who made a fortune in property on the embankment in London or something, drove around in a Rolls Royce, and they got into Jimmy's ear, and I'll look after you, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then Jimmy came and wanted to leave us. And I thought, oh no, you can't be real. So you've just signed a contract, but of course in English law, the contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. All it means is you can get damages. So we were forced to sue Jimmy, which I wasn't comfortable with. But on the other hand, I didn't want to just let somebody else steal him as it would have been. And we sued him. And the court, and this thing went on right until the death. We're going up the courts, the Crown Court in Manchester, and then the solicitors settled for a six-figure payment to us, to take over the contract because they made him break a contract, and that was the only money I made off Jimmy. So I'm back with Hills and a court conviction. However, I've made it. I still loved Jimmy. Even after that, we still were very great friends. And he went through a series of managers. And I said to him, look, why don't you go to Barry Hearn? He's the best manager there. If you're going to go to somebody, go to him. What are you going through all these gangsters and idiots for? And I did a deal with Barry Hearn, where we got an introductory fee for 3 years on the percentage of Jimmy's earnings. So we did earn money from that as well. Barry Hearn did a good job. with him. And that was that.
Now, we said we were going to talk about Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. We've got just a few minutes left. Would it be fair to say that that's your biggest regret?
Oh no, I've got other regrets.
You've got other regrets.
When you're saying regrets, if you're talking about, well, yes, the regret of that was that I wasn't going to become an impresario in the theatre, which I wanted to be. I subsequently became a director of the Palace Theatre in Manchester in 1980 and did a lot of work in the theatre there. But in the 60s, I wanted to move on into being a huge theatrical impresario that put musicals on. That was my idea about that. But that sort of was very unfortunate. They came up to me out of the blue with a song for Herman's Hermits, which was subsequently a hit for Jason Donovan, which is a #1 from Joseph and the Dreamcoat. Any dream will do. And I think it came to us as I Fancy You, which was a song for Peter Noone. And Mickey Mouse rejected it. I've listened to about 8 seconds of it. So although Mickey was a very good picker, he also missed on a load of other songs as well, which were subsequently huge hits. I had the dilemma when I put them on a management contract, a management development contract. This is Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. And that ran for a couple of years. And at the end of which, we were in a position where we could renew it at a bigger price. They were getting nothing, maybe £10 a week. I don't know what it was. It was just something to keep the wolves at bay. And they said, we've written this thing called Jesus Christ Superstar. We're doing a double album on it. So we're going to do an album on it. And I thought, oh no, I can't start selling Jesus Christ in North Manchester. That ain't going to work. And I just had this, I mean, it's childish, I know, but I just didn't. I was basically from an Orthodox background, and then we'd rebelled and we'd become more modern, and then we weren't religious at all, particularly. But to start selling Jesus Christ Superstar would have been very, very embarrassing for my parents and family and God knows what. So I said, okay, well, fine, and let it go. That was what I should have done. Was I shouldn't have touched Jesus Christ Superstar anyhow. I should have published Joseph and the Dreamcoat. I should have just got them signed a publishing agreement and just published it. Forget anything else. I saw Tim Rice in 2004 at the Ivor Novellos, where he was getting an award for this, Joseph and the Dreamcoat. He said, do you want to know what I earned in the last quarter of Joseph? And I said, no, not particularly. He says, £394,000. So that was 28 years after I had it in hand. It had earned in a quarter £394,000. You work it out. I console myself with the thought that, well, if I had have done that, I would probably be dead today. Because whatever excesses I was involved in, if I'd have had that money on top of it, I would have had planes, yachts, God knows what would have happened, and that would have been that.
Well, we'd be thankful you didn't get it and you're here to talk to us tonight. Harvey, thank you so much for being our guest this evening. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Harvey's book, Managing, this one, I'm Into Something Good, is available on Amazon, as is a short ebook, Managing the Bad Boys of Snooker, Jimmy, White and Alex Higgins, which is on the Kindle store. And to say thank you, I'm going to send you one of my books. This is some photography, which will wing its way to you over the next few days, and hopefully you'll enjoy flicking through that. Now, just a few words about our upcoming programme before we leave you. On the 28th of January, to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, I'll be chatting to Mariette Bermovitz about her memoir, Mindler's Journey, Hidden Child of the Holocaust. That is a fascinating story. And then on the 24th of February, we're delighted to host Maya Arad, noted as the foremost Hebrew writer outside of Israel. And I'll be speaking to Maya about the first of her books to be translated into English. It's called The Hebrew Teacher. We have much more in the pipeline. Please visit our website at millim.org.uk for more details. All of our online events are free, but if you would like to make a donation, there's a link in the chat, or you'll find a link on our website, and that will be much appreciated. It remains for me to thank our guest, Harvey Lisberg, once again. Thank you so much, Harvey. It's been a real pleasure. And looking forward to seeing you all again soon next time. Until then.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Harvey. And until then.
It was nice talking to you.
You too. Until then, stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.